King David, a man after God's own heart, faced many trials. His journey was marked by both triumphs and tribulations, victories and defeats. He had been a shepherd, a warrior, and a king, always striving to follow the path laid out for him by the divine. Yet despite his unwavering faith and dedication, he was not immune to the challenges that life would throw his way. He had battled giants and enemies, but nothing prepared him for the storm within his own household. The external battles were fierce, but the internal strife was even more devastating. The kingdom he had fought so hard to protect was now at risk from within, as the seeds of discord began to take root in his own family.
Driven by ambition, I sowed seeds of discord among the Israelites. My actions were calculated, each move designed to undermine the stability of my father's reign. I spoke to the people, planting doubts and fostering discontent. I knew that to achieve my goals, I needed to turn the hearts of the people against their king.
Absalom, his son, a prince of charm and charisma, plotted against him. He was not just any son, he was a figure who commanded attention and respect. His charm was his weapon, and he wielded it with precision. He knew that to gain power, he needed to win the people's favor, and he did so with a calculated grace. He exploited grievances, turning hearts against his father. Absalom listened to the people's complaints, their frustrations, and their desires for change. He presented himself as the solution to their problems, the leader who would bring about the justice and prosperity they longed for. His words were like honey, sweet and enticing, drawing the people closer to his cause.
My rebellion was a slow, simmering resentment. It was not born overnight, but grew over time, fueled by my ambition and my belief that I was destined for greatness. I watched and waited, biding my time, knowing that the moment would come when I could strike and claim what I believed was rightfully mine. I yearned for the throne, believing it was mine. The desire for power consumed me, driving me to take actions that I knew would lead to conflict. I saw the throne as my destiny, a symbol of the greatness I was meant to achieve. My ambition blinded me to the consequences of my actions, and I pressed forward with unwavering determination.
Absalom played the part of a compassionate leader, undermining David's authority. He presented himself as a man of the people, someone who understood their struggles and was committed to making their lives better. His charisma and charm won him many followers, and his influence grew with each passing day. David, unaware of the growing threat, continued to rule with wisdom and justice. He trusted in his faith and his advisors, believing that his kingdom was secure. He did not see the danger that was brewing within his own household, the threat that was growing stronger with each passing day.
My campaign chipped away at my father's reputation. Each word, each action was designed to weaken his authority and strengthen my own position. I knew that to succeed, I needed to erode the people's trust in their king and present myself as the better alternative.
The people, swayed by Absalom's charm, began to see him as their future leader. His promises of change and justice resonated with them, and they began to question David's ability to lead. The whispers of discontent grew louder, and the seeds of rebellion took root, began to whisper against their king. The once loyal subjects of David started to doubt his leadership, influenced by Absalom's persuasive words. The kingdom that had once been united under David's rule was now divided, with loyalties shifting and alliances forming in secret. The seeds of rebellion grew, threatening to tear apart the kingdom David had built. What started as a few whispers and doubts had now become a full-blown movement, challenging the very foundation of David's reign. The kingdom stood on the brink of civil war, with father and son pitted against each other in a battle for power and control. Absalom's rebellion gained momentum, spreading like wildfire across the land. He began raising an army from every tribe of Israel, uniting warriors from diverse backgrounds under a single cause.
The kingdom, once united under a single banner, was now on the brink of civil war. Brothers turned against brothers, and neighbors eyed each other with suspicion.
David, heartbroken and torn by the betrayal, refused to battle his own son. He could not bring himself to raise a sword against Absalom. He hoped reason would prevail, that Absalom would see his error and return to the fold. David believed in the power of forgiveness and reconciliation. But Absalom, driven by ambition and blinded by his desire for power, could not see the path of peace. He was determined to seize the throne at any cost.
Blinded by ambition, I pressed on, convinced that my vision for the kingdom was the true path forward. I gathered my forces, ready to challenge my father.
David made the agonizing decision to flee Jerusalem, avoiding bloodshed and hoping to spare the city from the horrors of war. He left behind the palace, the throne, and the city he loved. Accompanied by loyal followers, he became a king in exile. The kingdom was divided, families torn apart, friendships shattered. The bonds that once held the nation together were fraying. The prospect of a father battling his son became a devastating reality. The battlefield was set, and the clash between David and Absalom loomed large. The nation teetered on the edge of destruction, with cities and villages caught in the crossfire. The once prosperous land was now a war-torn landscape, filled with sorrow and despair. Yet amidst the chaos, there were those who prayed for peace, who believed that the kingdom could be healed. They held on to hope, even as the world around them crumbled. In the end, it was not the swords or the armies that would determine the fate of the kingdom, but the hearts of its people. David and Absalom, in their moments of reflection, would have to decide whether to continue the cycle of violence or seek a path to reconciliation. The future of the kingdom hung in the balance, waiting for the day when unity and peace could be restored. The story of David and Absalom was a testament to the enduring struggle between ambition and love, power and forgiveness. David's forces, though outnumbered, were determined to defend their king. They knew the odds were against them, yet their loyalty and courage drove them forward. Each soldier, with a heart full of resolve, prepared for the impending clash, understanding the gravity of the situation.
"Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom." These words, spoken with a heavy heart, echoed through the ranks. The king's plea was not just a command, but a desperate wish from a father torn between duty and love.
His words revealed his deep conflict. David's heart was a battlefield of its own. Torn between his responsibilities as a king and his love for his son, the anguish in his voice was palpable, a reflection of the turmoil within. The armies clashed in the forest of Ephraim. The dense woods became a theater of war where every tree and shadow could hide an enemy. The sounds of battle echoed through the forest, a symphony of chaos and destruction. David, though miles away, felt the weight of the conflict. He could almost hear the distant cries and clash of swords, each sound a reminder of the stakes. His mind was a whirlwind of fear and hope, each moment stretching into an eternity.
The battle raged, a chaotic dance of death. Soldiers fought with a ferocity born of desperation, each one knowing that their lives and the fate of their kingdom hung in the balance. The forest floor was soon littered with the fallen. Each life lost a heavy toll on the king's heart. Each fallen soldier added to David's burden. The weight of every life lost pressed down on him, a constant reminder of the cost of this conflict. The battlefield was a grim testament to the price of war, each casualty a silent witness to the king's sorrow.
The fate of his kingdom, the future of his people and the legacy of his reign were all at stake. The sun setting over the kingdom cast long shadows, mirroring the uncertainty that loomed over David's heart. And his son hung in the balance. The king's thoughts were consumed by Absalom, his beloved son, now turned adversary. The conflict was not just a battle for the throne, but a personal struggle that tore at the very fabric of his being. As the sun set, David paced restlessly, dreading the messenger's arrival. Each step echoed his anxiety, the silence of the room amplifying his fears. He knew that the news could bring either relief or despair, and the uncertainty was unbearable. He yearned for news, yet feared the outcome. The wait was torturous, each passing moment a reminder of the stakes. David's heart was heavy with anticipation, his mind racing with possibilities, each one more dreadful than the last. Absalom, riding furiously, found himself trapped, his long hair tangled in the branches of a mighty oak.
Once close to seizing the throne, I hung helpless.
The sight of Absalom dangling from the oak struck fear into his followers. Their resolve shattered, panic spread through their ranks. The tide of battle shifted. David's forces pressed their attack with renewed vigor. The rebels, demoralized and leaderless, were no match for Joab's army. The forest echoed with the sounds of defeat. The battle was over. Joab, a seasoned warrior, saw Absalom hanging helpless.
The king's command was clear: spare the young man's life.
But Joab, driven by his own sense of justice, saw an opportunity. He struck down Absalom, delivering fatal blows. Absalom's rebellion ended with his dying breath. Joab's actions, though decisive, violated the king's command. He believed he was saving David from further heartache. The news of Absalom's death spread through the ranks. For David's forces, it was a victory stained with the blood of the king's son. A lone rider approached the city gates with news from the battlefield. He was ushered into the king's presence.
Is the young man Absalom safe?
David's voice trembled with emotion. The messenger hesitated, knowing the weight of his words.
May the enemies of my lord the king be like that young man.
The news struck David like a physical blow. He staggered back, his face ashen with grief. The confirmation of his son's death shattered his last vestiges of hope. David's composure crumbled. He stumbled through the chamber, his cries echoing through the palace.
Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom.
His words were raw, filled with a father's grief. He had lost a son to the consequences of ambition. The guilt and remorse threatened to consume him. Those who witnessed his grief were stunned into silence. They had seen their king face countless dangers, but this was different. It was the sound of a heart breaking. David's lament became a haunting melody of sorrow. David's grief did not blind him to his responsibilities. He knew his kingdom needed him now more than ever. He had to set aside his personal sorrow. The rebellion had been quelled, but the kingdom was still fragile.
My heart is heavy, but I must lead my people.
The sight of their king, sorrowful yet resolute, stirred the Israelites. They saw in him a fellow human who had endured loss. David's leadership was rooted in his humanity and empathy. He bore the burdens of his people alongside his own. The story of Absalom is a profound exploration of loyalty. Absalom's betrayal cut deep, violating the bond between father and son.
My love for Absalom never wavered.
Absalom's rebellion was a rejection of that love. The story also highlights the loyalty of those who stood by David.
Though flawed, I remain steadfast in my devotion.
Loyalty shaped the narrative of David's reign. It was a force that could unite and divide. It brought both great joy and unbearable pain. The story of Absalom is a tragedy of ambition and betrayal. Absalom's thirst for power blinded him to his father's love.
My rebellion led to my demise and my father's grief.
It is a cautionary tale about the seductive nature of power, but it is also a story about redemption and forgiveness.
Though devastated, I never stopped loving him.
The story of Absalom resonates with themes throughout history. It speaks to the human condition and our struggles. It is a story of conflict and loss. The echoes of Absalom's rebellion remind us of family, power, and forgiveness. The story challenges us to examine our own hearts.
My response to betrayal offers a model of leadership and forgiveness.
The story of Absalom is not just ancient history, it reflects our own human struggles. It shows our capacity for both love and destruction. It challenges and inspires us. It reminds us of the enduring power of the human spirit.